The inspirational leader is a great listener. But what does listening involve? It doesn't involve just standing there with your ears open while the other person talks. There's a thing called active listening, where you ask people questions and you pull information out and you signal to them that you really are listening. And I just want to explore that briefly in this video. What does a great listener do? What does great listening look like? So I really like a model called the questioning funnel, which is interesting because really it's about listening. It's called the questioning funnel. And the idea is that you start with open questions like, how are you getting on? Or, how's work? Or, how are you finding the new machine? Some open question. Then there's probing questions of, really, tell me more about that. So, why do you find that bit difficult? And, what's good about it? What's bad about it? Those are the probing type questions. And then you might finish with a closed question of, so would you like me to get that fixed for you? So those are the yes or no questions. But the key is that middle phase when you're asking the probing questions. So when they say, well, it's good, but there are some parts that are not perfect. The probing question is, really, tell me more about those. So that's the probing questions. Tell me more about those. The difficult thing about probing questions is that you're improvising, because you don't know what they're going to say when you say, how's the machine doing? But the good news about probing questions is they have a standard format. You can pretty much always say, tell me more about that. Or why do you feel like that? Or how do you handle it? Or something like that. There's a friend of mine who's got a really good probing question that he uses all the time, which is talk me through it. So he goes, oh, not as good as the old machine. That's interesting. Talk me through it. So he just repeats what they've said and then says, talk me through it. Now, you can't always use the same probing question, but if you had 3 or 4 that you just alternated, you could probably get away with that your whole life. So those are the probing questions. Ideally, you would be probably only talking 10% of the time. So you would be asking a question for, say, 10%, and then they would be answering for 90%, and then you'd be asking another question. So it'd be about 90-10. Now, if you just do question, answer, it is a bit too much like an interrogation, although a lot of people are happy to talk about themselves without wanting you to talk back at all. But there's a refinement I quite like, which is question, answer, comment. Question, answer, comment. So what you do is after they've answered, you put a little comment before you ask your next question. So when they say, well, I don't really like the new machine because of da-da-da-da-da, you can say, yeah, I can see that would be a problem. Yeah, it's really weird that they've designed it like that. So how do you handle it? So you put a little comment just to show that you've really listened and you've understood. And it's actually quite a good discipline to always comment because it forces you to listen. Otherwise, you're preparing your next question and you're not really listening to their answer. So do a comment which summarizes and really shows and perhaps puts a bit of an opinion. Yeah, I know how you feel. I would find that annoying as well. So what do you think we should do about it? And you go into your next question. So a short question, big long answer, very short comment and another short question, and then off we go to the next answer. So it should be 90-10, them talking, you talking. And when you come away from a conversation, you shouldn't come away with your voice ringing in your ears. You should come away with their voice ringing in your ears. That means you've done it right. And this applies to almost every situation, really, social situations, work, but definitely when you're talking to people who work for you, when you're the leader and you're talking to your team, it should absolutely be them talking rather than you. So I've got a little challenge for you. When you're out with your friends this evening, make it a game to not use the word I at all. Don't say, I've done this and I'm doing that. And if they say, well, what happened at work today? Go, oh, well, I did this. Don't say that. Just say, well, it was just another day. But what about you? What did you do at work today? And if they ask you about your holiday, don't go into vomit mode of, well, we did this and we did that and it was really good. Don't do all that. Just say, yeah, it was a good trip actually. What about you though? Got any holidays planned? So just turn it around and make it a game to not talk about yourself at all. Now, just a final thing I want to add is body language while listening. Because if you were talking to me and I was sort of going, that's going to be awful, isn't it? And in fact, even if I just sort of look away a fair bit, you're starting to think he's not listening. So when you're talking to me, I need to be looking at you and I need to be nodding and making the occasional listening noise as well. Ooh, like that. So I need to be nodding, I need to be making little listening noises so that you know that I'm listening. And even if you want to look at your watch, don't. Even if there's something really interesting happening over there, don't look. You've got to absolutely have that eye contact and the nodding and the listening. So make sure your body language is good and make sure that you don't start to monopolize the conversation and talk about yourself, because a great leader is a great listener. So that's a little challenge for you now. When you're out with your friends, don't talk about yourself. And at work, when you're next with somebody who works for you, of course you might have to tell them a little bit about what's happening in the company, but make sure you do a really good bit of active listening with them. Ask them some questions, use the funnel, try to learn something new about everybody who works for you every time you talk to them. So that was the end of the section on communication, and I think it's a really important section. Possibly it's worth going back and having another look at it in a few days' time and really thinking hard about it, because I think communication is a difficult thing to get better at, but it really is an important thing to work on. If you find communication difficult, force yourself to do it. Force yourself to do a bit of walking about, force yourself to have a few more meetings, force yourself to be a better listener. It really is an absolute key skill.